Explain what you mean by saying she should be held accountable, but also that holding her accountable could be sexist.
Yeah, it's interesting because it has become such this lightning rod for what people think about Elizabeth Holmes and what they think about tech. What I'm saying is, you know, she should obviously be held accountable if the things that they've charged around the fraud and the deception and what she knew at the different times is true. But why are we only holding her accountable? There's so much male privilege that the people who have had similar wrongdoing, who are men, are not held accountable as CEOs the same way Elizabeth Holmes has been.
So, lots of pushback against your op-ed. Some people think it sounds like you're defending Elizabeth Holmes. Are you?
It's so bizarre. I'm saying she should be held accountable. I don't know how to make it more clear. I just don't think that we should allow all of these male CEOs to not be held accountable. I'm saying, we need to really take this moment and say, look, we can hold CEOs accountable, and we should be holding everyone who's doing things that are bad for their customers, bad for investors, bad for society, accountable for their actions and their leadership as well.
You write, questionable, unethical, even dangerous behavior has run rampant in the male-dominated world of startups. You compare her to Uber's Travis Kalanick, WeWork's Adam Newman, Juul's Kevin Burns, none of whom were prosecuted or known to have done anything illegal yet, and all of them have real working products. Is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, I think the wrongdoing and the harm that's been caused by these different companies is quite significant. You look at Uber, there are whole slews of customers who have said they've been sexually assaulted by drivers, and apparently Uber knew about it and didn't do anything about it. That's a lot of harm that doesn't get much worse than that. There have been, with Juul, they've built a market of vaping into the youth market that was very small before they came in. It was, I think, 12% of high schoolers in 2017 had vaped recently. It went up to 28% in 2019. And you started seeing people who are being harmed by vaping. 68 people died from vaping. Juul will say, oh, it's not necessarily from our devices, but you've created through all of this marketing and marketing to kids and to schools. And, I just saw Massachusetts is saying that they were marketing on Nickelodeon channels for very young children, not even high school age.
Right.
And they're selling flavors that appeal to kids. They're building a market and market share in this audience it's really, I don't know how you don't go after the CEO.
Now, Sunny Balwani is a co-defendant of Elizabeth Holmes, and if the prosecution, as you argue, represents some sort of bias against women or in favor of men, then why is he a co-defendant?
I'm focused on the CEOs, and obviously if you're going to take down Elizabeth Holmes, you're going to take down the person who is working most closely with her. If you're going to call it a conspiracy, obviously you can't have a conspiracy on your own, so you're going to bring in the person who has been the COO, the CFO, I think. I don't think that's proof that it's not sexist. I think they targeted the CEO, and then they're trying to take down the people around her to build their case.
So here's another issue, and I spoke with our legal reporter about this, is that your argument doesn't include some important legal considerations, which is that when prosecutors bring a criminal case, they need to be able to win. So connecting Holmes to fraud and the other issues that the prosecutors allege here is a much more simple proposition than trying to connect Mark Zuckerberg to what's happening in Myanmar or Juul to what's happening to a generation of vapors. How do you think about that?
Juul has 2,000 lawsuits against them, 2,000, and a lot of them are being handled by prosecutors. They just settled for $40 million in one case, so I don't think it's that different. I think if anything, they've got a lot more harm that people feel comfortable litigating around. So I'm not sure that actually works against me.
Now, Ellen, you've been continuing to do pioneering work on diversity and how we can make workplaces more inclusive. I'm curious what the reaction to your piece makes you think about progress or the lack thereof that we've made, and what you're seeing in this new remote work world. How is that affecting women and people of color in the workplace or the remote workplace?
Thank you for asking. So we've done some research on what workplaces have looked like since COVID, and we found that a lot of women, non-binary people, Black people, Latinx people, Asian people, Indigenous people, and especially people who are in intersections of those groups are experiencing a lot more harassment, a lot more harm, a lot more hostility. There's more ageism, there's more ableism, and it's all coming even remotely because I think the problems that we have in our workplaces, like discrimination and biases, they haven't gone away. You know, I think some people thought, well, if you're not in the same room, then it's really hard to sexually harass someone. It's actually, you know, the harassers are finding people online. They're finding ways to get them one-on-one in conversations or on email, and they don't seem to mind not being in the same room. And that's been a very disturbing learning from the work that we've done. From the last 24 hours, I've heard from a lot of women CEOs that I know, and they've been very supportive of this op-ed, and I think they are living it. Like, they know that there is bias, that there is privilege that's given to white men in the funding industry and in the expectations and the performance that they have to live up to, on the bar that they have to cross, that is much higher than what their counterparts who are male and white experience. And that, I think, makes them really understand what the message I was trying to get across. Like, we cannot continue to hold women to this higher bar. Men should be held to this bar of being, of not lying and not harming the customers and the community.
Right. Last quick question. I got about a minute left. I have to ask you about Reddit, your old haunt, $10 billion valuation, driving a new class or a group of people to finance, but certainly not without some drama. What's your quick take?
I mean, I think they're really pushing hard to get to IPO. I mean, the last number I saw was 15 billion in some unauthorized kind of anonymous source. I think they are, and unfortunately they're taking the Facebook path, where it's like, I want to drive engagement at all costs because that is what I'm going to be measured on in the public market. And I want, so you see the numbers they share are, numbers of users, number of monthly users, and
right.
that's not a healthy path.